Have you ever wondered if Adam was really the first human? Get ready for a revelation that's going to shake everything you believed about Genesis. The scriptures hold secrets that most people never noticed, clear evidence that other humans existed before and during Adam's time. Cain was afraid of who would kill him, married a mysterious woman, and built an entire city. For who if only 3 people existed in the world? The hidden truth between the biblical lines reveals that Adam wasn't the first biologically, but the first spiritually, chosen for a cosmic mission that would change humanity's destiny. This discovery completely transforms our understanding of who we are and why we're here. In the next few minutes, you're going to discover ancient secrets that few people know. There's a hidden truth in the first pages of Scripture that few people can see, a revelation that can completely transform your understanding of who you really are. Ancient Gnosis always knew that sacred words carry multiple layers of meaning, and when we dive into Genesis with the eyes of consciousness awakening, we discover something extraordinary. There aren't 1, but 2 completely distinct narratives about humanity's origin. This discovery is the key to understanding your true spiritual nature and purpose in this dimension. These 2 creations reveal fundamental aspects of reality that transcend our common perception. The first narrative, presented in Genesis 1, reveals a collective and cosmic creation of unimaginable proportions. The source of all that is simply declares humanity's existence through its primordial creative energy in a demonstration of power that echoes through dimensions. It's a grand perspective, where man and woman arise simultaneously as perfect reflections of divine consciousness. This isn't the story of specific individuals, but of humanity as a whole, a cosmic declaration about our essential nature as carriers of the divine spark. When you understand this first creation, you realize you carry the same energy that gave birth to the entire universe. In the second narrative, Genesis 2, the tone changes completely. Here we find a personal story where the Creator literally molds with his own hands a specific being called Adam. The creative energy becomes tangible, personal, almost maternal. Eve emerges later, in a sacred dance of complementarity that reveals divine polarity mysteries. This narrative speaks of conscious choice, specific purpose, of a unique spiritual mission that transcends biological existence. It's as if the Creator was saying, "Now I'm going to form someone special with a sacred task that will influence all creation." This understanding changes everything about how you see your life purpose. The deep mysticism of these perspectives reveals something extraordinary about our journey of illumination and spiritual awakening. Just like Jesus taught through parables, with multiple layers of meaning, these narratives invite us to look beyond the literal surface. They don't contradict, they complement each other masterfully, offering a richer understanding of who we really are, both parts of collective humanity and unique beings with specific purposes in universal spirituality. The occult has always been hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to develop perception to see beyond appearances. When we perceive that these apparently different stories can coexist harmoniously in our expanded consciousness, something profound awakens within us. We understand that our existence operates on multiple dimensions simultaneously. We're part of the universal whole and unique individuals with specific missions only we can fulfill. This duality represents the essence of human experience in its sublime complexity. It's the same energy that created galaxies and beats in your heart right now. This revelation prepares your consciousness to understand deeper mysteries about our true origin. The scriptures guard secrets that challenge our linear understanding of reality, and when we dive into Cain's story, we discover extraordinary clues about creation's true nature. Gnosis always taught that reality is much vaster and more complex than our rational mind can grasp, and the biblical narrative confirms this ancestral wisdom in surprising ways. After the first act of violence recorded in human history, when Cain eliminates his brother Abel, a question emerges that has intrigued mystics and scholars for millennia. Where did all these other people that Cain feared so much come from? This question isn't just academic. It opens portals of understanding about reality's true nature and our connection with dimensions that transcend the visible. When we analyze Genesis 4 with consciousness awakening eyes, we discover something that completely challenges our traditional understanding of human chronology. Cain, after receiving his divine sentence, expresses a very specific fear: "Whoever finds me will kill me." But wait a minute. If we follow the literal narrative, at this point in history there would only be Adam, Eve, and Cain himself in the entire world. Abel had already departed, so who would these mysterious people be that Cain feared so much? The energy of fear emanating from Cain suggests knowledge of a much broader reality than Scripture explicitly reveals. It's as if he knew something that we, modern readers, lost over the centuries. The narrative becomes even more intriguing when we discover that Cain not only fears other humans, but also manages to find a wife and generate offspring. Where did this mysterious woman come from? Even more fascinating is the fact that Cain builds an entire city called Enoch in honor of his son. Now, why would someone build a city if only a few people existed on Earth? A city implies population, commerce, social organization, culture, an entire civilization functioning parallel to Adam's family. This forces us to completely rethink our understanding about humanity's origin. Perhaps the story we know is just a fragment of a much vaster and more complex reality. The mysticism of these revelations invites us to expand our perception about creation's nature and our own spiritual origin. If other humans already existed when Cain was exiled, this means Adam's family represented only one specific lineage among many others that inhabited Earth. This understanding completely transforms our perspective about who we are and where we came from. Maybe Adam wasn't the first human biologically, but the first to receive a specific spiritual mission, the first to awaken to a higher consciousness. This possibility aligns perfectly with Gnosis teachings, which always affirmed that different levels of spiritual development exist among human beings. When we allow this new understanding to penetrate our consciousness, something fundamental transforms in our perception of reality. We begin to understand that sacred narratives operate on multiple dimensions simultaneously: historical, symbolic, mystical, and spiritual. The existence of other humans beyond Adam's family doesn't diminish biblical narrative's importance. On the contrary, it enriches it immensely, revealing a much vaster and more mysterious cosmos than we imagined. This prepares us to understand that our own existence may be connected to realities and purposes that transcend our current perception. If the world was always more complex than appearances suggest, what other extraordinary truths about our spiritual nature still await our awakening? Adam's true nature completely transcends our superficial understanding about the first man, revealing a spiritual dimension that few can perceive. When we dive into the depths of the original Hebrew language, we discover that the words used to describe Adam's mission carry sacred meanings that completely transform our perception about his role in creation. Gnosis always taught that certain people are chosen to serve as bridges between the material world and higher spiritual dimensions, and Adam represents the first recorded example of this divine function. Scripture reveals he wasn't created simply to exist, but to fulfill a specific mission that would influence all humanity. His energy wasn't just human, it was a hybrid frequency between earthly and celestial. The Hebrew term avad, used to describe Adam's work in Eden, reveals layers of meaning that go far beyond simple gardening. This sacred word simultaneously means cultivate, serve, worship, and minister, concepts that transport us directly into the realm of highest spirituality. When we understand that Adam was performing avad in the garden, we realize he wasn't just taking care of plants. He was performing spiritual service of cosmic proportions. It was as if every act of caring for creation was simultaneously an act of worship, a form of divine ministration that maintained harmony between heaven and earth. Imagine someone who, while watering a flower, was simultaneously nurturing their own soul and strengthening the connection between dimensions. The second keyword, Shema, meaning guard, protect, and preserve, reveals another extraordinary dimension of Adam's mission. He wasn't just a spiritual gardener, he was a cosmic guardian, responsible for maintaining the integrity of a sacred space where divine energy could fully manifest in physical reality. Eden wasn't simply a beautiful garden, it was an interdimensional portal, a place where the occult became visible and where illumination was naturally and spontaneously possible. Adam served as the first priest of this expanded reality, keeping energies in perfect balance. When we apply this understanding to our own life, we realize each of us can develop this same consciousness of spiritual guardian. The mysticism of this priestly function reveals something deep about our own nature and spiritual potential. Just like Jesus would later demonstrate the perfect synthesis between humanity and divinity, Adam represented the first attempt to establish this sacred bridge in human experience. He wasn't a common man who received occasional divine visits. He was a being consciously attuned to creation's highest frequencies, capable of perceiving and interacting with realities that remain invisible to unawakened consciousness. His entire life was a form of prayer in movement, where every breath, every step, every gesture was imbued with spiritual meaning. This understanding invites us to rethink our own relationship with the sacred. When we finally understand that Adam was humanity's first priest, something fundamental awakens in our own spiritual consciousness. We realize his story isn't just about the past, it's a map for our own awakening potential. If he could serve as a bridge between dimensions, if he could maintain sacred spaces through his conscious presence, if he could transform physical work into spiritual worship, then we too can develop these same capacities. The energy that flowed through Adam continues available for anyone willing to tune into these higher frequencies. This means each of us carries within the potential to become a spiritual guardian, a priest or priestess of the new consciousness emerging on our planet. True wisdom emerges when we can harmoniously integrate scientific knowledge with the deepest spiritual revelations, discovering that both point to mysteries that transcend our current understanding of reality. Modern science, through advanced genetics, presents us with fascinating concepts like mitochondrial Eve and Y-chromosomal Adam, discoveries that surprisingly echo ancestral narratives about our origins. These scientific terms refer to the most recent genetic ancestors of all current humanity, but here's the extraordinary detail. These two individuals didn't live at the same time, nor were they a couple. Gnosis always taught that reality operates in multiple and simultaneous layers, and these scientific discoveries confirm that our origin is much more complex and mysterious than any linear narrative could explain. When we analyze scientific estimates about these genetic ancestors, we discover timelines extending hundreds of thousands of years, periods that don't align with literal interpretations of Scripture. But here lies an extraordinary revelation. Maybe sacred narratives never intended to provide precise biological chronologies. Authentic spirituality always operated through symbolism and archetypes, communicating truths that transcend linear time limitations. It's as if Scripture was whispering, don't get stuck on temporal details. Understand the eternal patterns we're revealing. This perspective frees our consciousness from the need to choose between science and faith, allowing both to coexist as different lenses through which we can contemplate the same fundamental mystery. True illumination emerges when we understand that genetic discoveries can coexist perfectly with Adam's narrative, as long as we expand our perception about what this narrative really means. Maybe Adam doesn't represent the first human biologically, but the first to receive a specific spiritual mission, the first to awaken to a superior consciousness that connected him directly with the source of all that is. Just like Jesus would later demonstrate that it's possible to be simultaneously human and divine, Adam may have represented the first conscious experiment of fusion between matter and spirit. Science tells us about biological evolution. Spirituality reveals consciousness evolution. These aren't contradictory perspectives. They're complementary aspects of the same grandiose cosmic process. The mysticism of this integration reveals something deep about our own dual nature as conscious human beings. We carry within us both the genetic heritage of millions of years of biological evolution and the potential for spiritual awakening that completely transcends material limitations. The energy that animates our physical body is the same energy. That connects us with higher dimensions of consciousness. This means our awakening journey doesn't need to deny our biological nature. On the contrary, it can integrate it harmoniously in an evolutionary process that encompasses both matter and spirit. Maybe true gnosis is precisely this capacity to operate simultaneously in multiple dimensions of reality, honoring both our genetic ancestry and our illumination potential. When we finally manage to integrate these apparently divergent perspectives, something extraordinary happens in our understanding of reality. We realize we don't need to choose between being scientifically informed or spiritually awakened. We can be both simultaneously, honoring both empirical data and mystical revelations. This synthesis prepares us to understand that our own existence is much richer and multidimensional than any single perspective could encompass. We carry within us the wisdom of evolutionary ages and the potential to completely transcend them. Through spiritual awakening, if we can harmonize science and spirituality in our understanding about humanity's origins, imagine what other extraordinary syntheses await our discovery. The most extraordinary revelation about Adam emerges when we understand that his story doesn't end with a fall, but prefigures the greatest demonstration of consciousness awakening that humanity has ever witnessed. Scripture reveals a cosmic pattern where the first Adam and the last Adam, Jesus, represent two fundamental points in humanity's spiritual evolution. This isn't just an interesting theological comparison, it's the key to understanding our own transformation journey. Gnosis always taught that certain events and people serve as universal archetypes, and the connection between these two Adams reveals a sacred map for our own illumination. The energy that manifested through both continues available for anyone willing to tune into these higher frequencies of consciousness, offering us a clear path to transcend our apparent human limitations. Adam represents the beginning of a specific human consciousness experience, the capacity for moral choice, spiritual responsibility, and unfortunately, also the experience of separation from the source of all that is. His story symbolizes the moment when humanity developed sufficient self-awareness to both obey and disobey divine guidance. But here's the extraordinary insight. This capacity for choice, even when it results in error, is essential for authentic spiritual development. Without the real possibility of choosing the wrong path, there can be no genuine spiritual merit in choosing the right path. Adam didn't fail accidentally. He represented a necessary stage in human consciousness development. It's like a teenager who needs to make certain mistakes to develop true wisdom. Jesus, the last Adam, represents the culmination of this evolutionary consciousness journey, a human being who managed to maintain perfect connection with divine energy even while experiencing all the limitations and temptations of human condition. He demonstrated that it's possible to live in permanent state of consciousness awakening, even amid the most challenging circumstances. Where the first Adam yielded to the temptation of trying to be equal to the Creator through selfish means, Jesus manifested this same divinity through love, service, and conscious sacrifice. The mysticism of this transformation reveals that each of us carries both Adam's potential, the capacity for choice and error, and Jesus' potential, the capacity for transcendence and illumination. Authentic spirituality doesn't ask us to deny our humanity, but to elevate it to its maximum potential through conscious connection with our divine nature. The transformative energy that Jesus brought to the world wasn't exclusively his. It was a demonstration of the latent potential in all awakened human consciousness. When he said we would do greater works than his, he was revealing that his mission was to awaken this same potential in each of us. The occult has always been accessible. We just needed someone to show us the way back to our true nature. Every miracle Jesus performed was simultaneously a demonstration of spiritual power and an invitation for us to develop the same capacities. This means our consciousness awakening journey isn't about becoming something we're not, but about remembering and activating what we've always been in our deepest essence. When we finally understand that we're simultaneously heirs of both Adam's experience and Jesus' potential, something revolutionary happens in our perception of spiritual reality. We realize we're not victims of an ancestral fall, but conscious participants in a grandiose evolutionary process that leads us back to union with the source of all that is. Our journey isn't about escaping human condition, but about transforming it into a vehicle for divine expression. Every challenge we face, every choice we make, every awakening moment we experience, brings us closer to this perfect synthesis between humanity and divinity that Jesus exemplified. The gnosis that emerges from this understanding is simultaneously humble and grandiose. We're small in our current form, but infinite in our potential. The story that began with Adam continues through each of us. Now you have knowledge that few people have access to. But knowing isn't enough. You got to apply it. How are you going to use these revelations to awaken your own consciousness? What aspects of your spirituality are you ready to transform today? If Adam was chosen for a sacred mission, what's your mission in this life? Stop living on autopilot. Stop accepting ready-made answers. You carry within you the same divine energy that created the universe. It's time to awaken to your true spiritual nature. Start today. Meditate on these revelations. Question your limiting beliefs. Seek your direct connection with the sacred. Your journey of illumination is just beginning. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to keep discovering hidden truths that will revolutionize your consciousness. The next video will reveal even deeper secrets.